What would you do if the person you trusted most was the one robbing you blind? That's the question that haunted me the day I got a mobile alert saying my credit card limit had been exceeded. I blinked twice, thinking it had to be some kind of glitch. I hadn't made any big purchases, let alone in another city, but when I opened the app, my heart nearly stopped. Thousands of dollars, gone. Lavish restaurants, luxury boutiques, rental charges, all in a place I'd never even set foot in. My name is Brian. I'm 39 years old and I used to think I had a stable life. A good job as a logistics manager, a steady routine, and a wife I'd been married to for over 11 years. We weren't flashy or dramatic. We were just comfortable, or so I thought. But that one notification cracked the shell of my so-called reality. What started as a tiny tremor of doubt turned into an earthquake that would destroy everything I thought I knew about my marriage and force me to rebuild my life from the ground up. Before I dive into the details, take a second to support the channel. Hit that like button, subscribe if you love true stories with real consequences, and drop a comment with the city you're watching from. I want to see how far this story reaches. And of course, let me know what you would have done in my place. Because this isn't just a story about betrayal. It's a story about quiet revenge, about how sometimes the best way to fight back is in silence. In this video, I'm going to walk you through how I discovered my wife was living a double life, spending nearly $20,000 behind my back, and how I flipped the script, legally, smartly, and without giving her the satisfaction of a single dramatic scene. You'll see how small details, like a second phone number, a Pilates class that didn't exist, and a single email from a homeowners association, pulled the mask off a person I thought I knew. But this isn't just about catching a cheater. It's about reclaiming your power when you've been made to feel powerless. It's about using pain as fuel and turning heartbreak into liberation. So buckle up, because once I opened my eyes, there was no going back. And the way I handled it? Let's just say, she never saw it coming. Ready? Let me take you back to the beginning, where the cracks first started to show. At first, I tried to convince myself I was being paranoid. Maybe there was some logical explanation. Maybe Rachel had made some of those purchases by mistake. Or maybe there was some emergency she didn't tell me about. But the truth has a way of slipping through the cracks, even when you try to seal them shut. It started with small things. A new Pilates routine that required her to be out of the house longer than usual. Odd, but I didn't question it. Then there were the sudden business trips that came out of nowhere, unplanned, unannounced, and always with vague details. But the real red flag, she started locking her phone. Rachel never used to do that. We were the kind of couple who could hand each other our phones without thinking twice. Now she guarded hers like it held state secrets. I still remember the night I heard a vibration in the kitchen at 2 a.m. I walked in, expecting to see her phone on the counter, maybe a missed call, but there was nothing there. The sound had come from her purse. Inside, I found a second phone. That was the moment the floor started to shift under me. I didn't confront her, not yet. Something in me told me to stay quiet, to watch, to collect, to prepare. So I started saving everything. Every suspicious transaction, every late-night excuse, every screenshot. I opened a private account at a different bank and began moving small amounts of money without her noticing. One day, I got an email from a homeowners association, sent by mistake. It mentioned a unit under my name in a neighborhood I'd never lived in. My stomach dropped. I drove out there just to be sure. What I saw stunned me. A sleek, unfamiliar car was parked in the driveway. The apartment looked lived in. Curtains in the windows, lights on inside. And yet I'd never been there, not once. My name was on the lease, but my feet had never touched that floor. That night I couldn't sleep. I laid in bed next to Rachel, listening to the soft rhythm of her breathing, wondering how long she had been lying to me, wondering if she was dreaming about him. I wasn't ready to explode. Not yet. I was ready to outsmart her. So the next morning, while she thought I was at work, I did something else. I hired a private investigator, and that's when everything changed. I didn't know what to expect when I hired the investigator. A part of me still hoped he'd come back with nothing, that maybe I was just overthinking, reading into things that weren't there. But deep down I already knew I just needed proof. The PI was sharp, ex-military, no nonsense. Within a few days, he'd already tracked movements, captured photos, and pulled together a preliminary report. What he showed me made my stomach churn. Rachel wasn't just renting that apartment, she was living a second life in it. The man staying there? Not a random fling. This was someone she'd been seeing regularly, intimately. They grocery shopped together, walked their dog. Yes, they even had a dog. It was like she had copied our life and pasted it into another zip code, only replacing me with someone else. But here's what hit even harder. The purchases on my credit card. Furniture, electronics, decor, every bit of it was used to furnish that secret apartment. And the guy. He was driving a car registered under my name. She'd gone as far as selling furniture from our own home, quietly, one piece at a time, claiming she was decluttering or donating. I remember how she smiled when I said the living room felt empty. Now I realize she wasn't getting rid of the past. She was financing her new life. I went cold inside. The betrayal wasn't just emotional, it was strategic, calculated. She had slowly and deliberately dismantled our shared life, not in a fit of passion, but with precision. And all the while she'd look me in the eyes and ask if I wanted takeout or homemade pasta. So I did what any cornered man would do. I got smarter. I compiled everything. Bank statements, credit reports, screenshots, photos from the PI. I reviewed our marriage contract. Thankfully, we had a partial prenup that protected assets from before the wedding, but everything acquired together was fair game. And she was trying to take it all. That night, while Rachel was gone on yet another business trip, I made copies of everything and scheduled a meeting with a divorce attorney. Not just any attorney, this one specialized in fraud and contested divorces. I was done playing the quiet, trusting husband. She thought she was ahead of me, that I was too blind, too comfortable, too weak to fight back. She had no idea what was coming. The attorney didn't even flinch when I laid everything out. She'd seen it all before. Double lives, hidden assets, betrayal packaged with a smile. But even she raised her eyebrows when I showed her the extent of Rachel's deception. The fake lease, the stolen credit, the sold furniture, the apartment in my name. It wasn't just infidelity, it was fraud. Good thing you didn't confront her, she said. You've got leverage now, real leverage. And that's when my quiet revenge officially began. Step 1, I contacted the bank and flagged all the unauthorized expenses. I wasn't about to let her new boyfriend live off my credit like he'd earned it. The charges were frozen, investigations launched. I even issued a credit alert to block any future activity in my name. No more surprise bills, no more stolen freedom. Step 2, I shut down every shared account. Bank, credit, utilities, streaming services. You name it. If it had both our names, it was either frozen or transferred to a secure account under mine alone. I even changed passwords on platforms she never used, just in case. Step 3, I filed for a contested divorce and hit her with charges of fraud and identity misuse. The attorney helped me submit every piece of evidence to the court. Emails, transactions, photos, dates, details. I built a paper trail so solid that no judge in their right mind could look at her as a victim. But the most satisfying part? She didn't even know it was happening. I moved with surgical precision. I scheduled the court filings while she was out of town. I made sure the summons would be delivered when she least expected it. No screaming match, no door-slamming fight. Just silence, followed by a legal punch she never saw coming. And then, she reached out. She texted me like nothing had happened, saying we needed to talk like adults, that we could work through this together if I would just stop overreacting. The audacity. I didn't respond. My attorney did. She called again, left voicemails, begging, bargaining, blaming me for turning cold. But I'd been cold long before the papers were served. The difference now was I had clarity. The court granted me temporary asset protection while they investigated the fraud. Her access was cut off. The fake life she'd built on my back began to crumble, piece by piece. And me? I was just getting started. As the court process moved forward, so did I. Literally. I needed space, both mentally and physically, from everything tied to Rachel. Every corner of our house whispered memories that now felt poisoned. The sofa where we watched movies, sold behind my back. The kitchen where we laughed. She'd used it to pack meals for another man. Even the bed. Yeah, I couldn't even look at it the same. So I requested an internal transfer through my company. Same role, different location. I had contacts in a quieter branch up north, and within weeks, the paperwork was done. I boxed up the essentials, left the keys on the counter, and drove away without looking back. That drive felt like shedding an old skin. I didn't tell Rachel where I was going. She no longer had the right to know. For the first time in years, I felt like I was making decisions for myself, not for us. Not to keep peace, not to avoid an argument. Just for me. I found a modest cabin property tucked away in rural Montana. Nothing fancy, just land, quiet, and the kind of silence that heals. I bought it outright with assets that were protected by the prenup. Money she couldn't touch, no matter how clever she'd tried to be. And then, I did something that surprised even me. I adopted 2 dogs from a local shelter. Big, goofy, loyal creatures who didn't care about past mistakes or broken vows. They just needed care, and they gave it back tenfold. Their presence grounded me in ways therapy never could. They were my companions in the new chapter of a life that was no longer about survival, but about peace. Meanwhile, Rachel's world was unraveling. Her new partner disappeared as soon as the credit cards stopped working. No more luxury dinners, no more apartment upgrades. When you take away the money, you often take away the lies with it. She tried to blame me in court, said I'd left her in financial ruin. But the records spoke louder than her tears. Fraud, identity misuse, misappropriation of marital assets. The judge wasn't moved by her sudden vulnerability. She'd orchestrated a deception so elaborate it crossed the line from betrayal to crime. And the irony? The very man she'd tried to erase became the reason she couldn't move forward. While she scrambled to fix what she'd broken, I was sitting on my porch, sipping coffee, watching the sun rise over pine-covered hills, finally breathing like a free man. The courtroom wasn't dramatic like in the movies. No gasps, no shouting, no last-minute confessions. It was quiet, clinical, cold. But behind every legal word, every stamp of approval, there was a current of justice flowing straight toward me. My lawyer stood tall and calm, presenting each piece of evidence like it was part of a puzzle only I had solved. Screenshots, bank statements, witness reports from the private investigator. Everything was documented. Everything was undeniable. Rachel sat across the room, a ghost of the person I once knew. She looked tired, hollow. And for the first time I realized I didn't feel hate toward her, just emptiness, like watching someone drown in a pool they built themselves. The judge listened, asked questions, took notes, and when the verdict came, it was swift. Rachel was ordered to repay a portion of the misused funds, relinquish any claims to the protected assets, and respond to formal investigations into identity misuse. A financial guardian was assigned temporarily to oversee her transactions and her attempt to request alimony. Denied. The partial prenup had been my lifeline, but the fraud sealed her fate. When we stepped out of the courtroom, she tried one last time to approach me. No anger in her eyes this time, just fear. Maybe she finally realized I wasn't the man she thought she could manipulate forever. But I didn't speak. I didn't need to. My silence was louder than any speech. You know, people think revenge needs to be loud, messy. Shouting matches, public exposures, destroyed property. But the truth is, the most powerful revenge is dignity. It's composure. It's watching someone self-destruct while you stand just far enough away not to be burned. And that's what I did. But I won't lie, there were nights when the weight of it all sat heavy on my chest. Nights when I questioned myself, wondered if I could have done something different, earlier. Wondered if I missed the signs or chose not to see them. But healing doesn't always look like forgiveness. Sometimes healing looks like distance, boundaries, and letting the universe do its job. I wasn't out for blood. I was out for peace. And once the court had spoken, that's exactly what I found. Funny thing is, while Rachel's life was tied up in legal messes and financial audits, mine was blossoming in quiet, steady ways she never imagined. When you go through something like this, something that flips your world inside out, you realize just how much of yourself you'd handed over without even noticing. I spent years trying to make Rachel happy, adjusting my routines, filtering my words, shrinking my own needs to keep the peace. I thought that was love, but in reality, it was slow erosion, like a cliff being worn down by waves day after day, until one morning, it collapses. After the divorce proceedings wrapped up and the legal mess started to settle, I took a deep breath. The kind of breath you don't even realize you've been holding for years. My days looked nothing like before, and that was the point. I started waking up with the sun, not to beat traffic or answer emails, but to walk the dogs through trails that smelled of pine and morning dew. I found comfort in the silence. No buzzing phones, no fake excuses, no tension in the air. Just nature, raw and honest. I picked up old hobbies I had abandoned. Woodworking, photography. Things I used to love but gave up because they didn't fit into our lifestyle. Turns out our lifestyle was a lie, and those forgotten passions. They were pieces of the real me trying to come back to life. I met people in the small town, not because I needed distraction, but because I wanted connection. Genuine, simple connection. The kind that doesn't come with hidden phones or stories that don't add up. And slowly I began to forgive. Not her, but myself. I forgave myself for trusting too much, for staying too long, for not listening to that inner voice that whispered, "Something's off." That voice was right, and from now on, it would be the only voice I never ignore. Rachel tried to reach out a few more times, emails, a letter, apologies mixed with excuses, claims that she was lost, that she didn't know what she wanted, that I was too good to her, as if that was somehow the problem. But I didn't answer. I had already said everything I needed to say in court, in action, in silence. What she never understood is that love isn't a blank check. It's a partnership built on truth. And once she forged that truth, the check bounced, and I cashed out. And now? Now I was finally learning how to live on my own terms. Freedom isn't loud. It doesn't announce itself with fireworks or blaring music. No, real freedom slips in quietly. Like the first time you sleep through the night without anxiety gnawing at your chest, or when you wake up and your first thought isn't fear, but peace. That's what I was starting to feel. For the first time in years, I wasn't reacting to chaos. I was choosing calm. I wasn't walking on eggshells trying to decode someone's mood or hide disappointment behind small talk. I was just being. And in that stillness, I found strength I didn't know I had. I remember one morning I was chopping wood in the backyard. It was cold, the kind of cold that stings your lungs. The dogs were chasing each other through the snow. I paused for a second and realized, this is what safety feels like. This is what life is supposed to feel like. Not perfect, not flashy, but real. Rachel had built a fantasy around appearances, designer handbags, romantic getaways, curated social media posts, but none of it was rooted in honesty. It was a house of cards, and the moment the wind blew, it fell apart. Me? I was building something solid, quiet, unshakable, and the irony is, she always said I was boring, too predictable, too routine. But in the end, that very consistency, the loyalty, the patience, the quiet strength was what saved me. What she saw as weakness became my greatest weapon. It's strange how betrayal can be a mirror. It shows you what you truly value. For me, it wasn't revenge in the traditional sense. It wasn't about making her suffer. It was about reclaiming my narrative, taking back the version of me that she tried to replace. She didn't just cheat on me with another man. She cheated on the life we built. She forged a parallel world while I was showing up, every single day believing in something that didn't exist anymore. And yet, in all of that pain, I found clarity. I wasn't broken. I was redirected. Everything I thought I lost, trust, peace, identity, wasn't gone. It had just been buried under the weight of a lie. And now, shovel in hand, I was digging it back up, one truth at a time. I didn't need to check in on Rachel. I wasn't scrolling her social media or asking around. But in a small world, especially one wrapped in legal red tape, some things have a way of reaching you whether you want them to or not. Word got back to me through my lawyer, through friends I hadn't even realized were paying attention. Her new relationship? Over. He bailed when the credit cards stopped working and the apartment lease was terminated under fraud claims. Turns out, love based on stolen luxury isn't love at all. It's just a transaction waiting to expire. She tried to recover her image, claimed it was a misunderstanding, a complicated situation. But you can't lie your way out of paperwork. She had left a trail of her own deception, and the law followed it like a bloodhound. Meanwhile, my days were getting simpler and stronger. I started journaling, not because I wanted to write a book or tell the world, but because I needed to speak to the one person I hadn't really spoken to in years, myself. At first, it was hard to even get the words down, the anger, the embarrassment, the disbelief. But as I kept writing, I noticed the tone shifting. Less rage, more release, less pain, more perspective. I was no longer writing from the wound, I was writing from the scar. You know, people think justice only happens in courtrooms. But there's another kind of justice, slower, quieter, but just as powerful. It's watching someone lose everything they lied to keep, while you gain everything you almost forgot you deserved. That's the real victory. Not the money, not the property, not even the legal win. It's the peace. The ability to sit with yourself and feel whole again, to know that you survived something designed to break you and came out wiser, steadier, unshaken. Rachel thought she was building a better life without me. What she built was a trap, and she walked into it herself. Me? I didn't need to set traps. I just needed to tell the truth. And the truth, when backed with patience and precision, is the sharpest blade there is. And the best part? I never had to raise my voice, I just had to raise my standards. They say grief comes in waves, but what they don't tell you is that healing does too. One morning it just hits you differently. The air feels lighter. The bitterness fades into something quieter, almost gentle. That's when you know you're not surviving anymore. You're living. I didn't rush to date again. That wasn't the goal. I wasn't looking to fill a void, because I had finally stopped bleeding. But as time passed, I started saying yes more. Not to people necessarily, but to experiences, to life. I joined a local hiking group, not because I was trying to meet anyone, but because I missed hearing other people laugh without agendas attached. I took weekend road trips with the dogs. I went fishing, learned how to fix old radios, found joy in the kind of silence that isn't empty, but full of meaning. One afternoon I ran into a woman at the farmer's market. She was picking out peaches, arguing playfully with the vendor about which were ripe. We both reached for the same one and laughed. It was the kind of moment you don't plan, the kind that reminds you there's still magic in the world. We chatted, nothing serious. But I remember walking away and thinking, I'm okay. I can do this. I can start again. It wasn't about replacing anyone. It was about finally making space for something real to find me, when I was ready, not when I was empty. Meanwhile, Rachel's situation kept deteriorating. The fraud investigations moved forward. The court started restricting her access to credit, and the story she spun for her friends began to unravel. Turns out, it's hard to keep a lie alive when the receipts say otherwise. I never gloated. I never messaged her. Never posted some cryptic quote online hoping she'd see it. I didn't need her to watch me thrive. I needed to thrive for myself. And I was. The man I had become? He was quieter, maybe a little more cautious, but not jaded, not bitter. I hadn't let her break me. If anything, she'd forged me in fire. You see, pain doesn't just destroy, it refines. And when you come out the other side, you're not the same. You're stronger, sharper, and above all, free. There's a moment after the storm has passed when you stop looking over your shoulder. For me, that moment came one quiet evening on my porch. The dogs were lying at my feet. The sun was slipping behind the hills, painting the sky in those impossible Montana colors, orange, lavender, gold. I was sipping black coffee, no sugar, just how I like it now. I hadn't touched a drop of alcohol in months, not out of fear, but because I no longer needed to numb anything. And it hit me. This was it. Not the house, not the land, but the stillness inside me. The weight that used to live in my chest, the worry, the doubt, the shame. It was gone, like a toxic fog that finally lifted. I thought about Rachel, not with hate, not even with sadness, just distance. Like a character from a book I once read and put back on the shelf. I didn't need to revisit the story. I already knew how it ended. Some people walk into your life to love you, others walk in to teach you. Rachel was my lesson. A painful one, sure, but necessary. She taught me what happens when you ignore your instincts, when you pour into someone who's only there to siphon, when you mistake loyalty for blind devotion. And most importantly, she taught me that protecting your peace is not selfish, it's survival. People ask me if I regret those 11 years. if I'd go back and change things. And here's the truth. No. Because without that betrayal, I'd still be sleepwalking through a life that wasn't mine. I'd still be compromising my joy for the sake of someone else's convenience. I wouldn't have discovered the strength I never knew I had. Rachel thought she took everything from me. But all she really did was set me free. In losing her, I found myself. I found my voice in the silence, my courage in the collapse, my purpose in the ashes. And that's something no one can ever take away again. Because once you rebuild yourself from the ground up, brick by honest brick, you're not just stronger, you're untouchable. And the life I have now, it's not perfect, but it's mine, and that is enough. Sometimes I still get those automated alerts on my phone. Credit card activity, bank transfers, account logins. And every time I pause for just a second, muscle memory, I guess, a leftover flicker from the time when every notification could mean another betrayal. But now I check, and it's just me, just a bill I paid, a tank of gas, a donation to the local shelter. No secrets, no double life hiding in the transaction history. Just me, living a life that doesn't require me to look over my shoulder anymore. That's the part nobody tells you about starting over. It's not about reinventing yourself. It's about remembering who you were before someone made you forget. Before you bent and shrank yourself into someone else's comfort zone. Before you allowed someone to use your love as a weapon. And once you remember that version of yourself, you guard it like treasure. These days, I've made peace with the scars. I don't hide them. They're not signs of weakness. They're proof I fought, proof I survived. Proof that no matter how carefully someone tries to dismantle your world, they can't touch your soul unless you hand it to them. Rachel never got mine. Not fully. She tried, sure. She used my trust like a credit card with no limit. She built a fantasy life with my money, my name, my stability. But in the end, it collapsed under its own lies. She once told me I was too safe, that I was predictable. Funny, because while she was chasing chaos disguised as excitement, I was building a foundation, one she could never shake. And now I've built something better, something unshakable. Not just a house, or a job, or a routine, but a life that doesn't need approval, that doesn't ask for permission to be peaceful. And to anyone who's ever been betrayed like I was, to anyone who's had their world turned upside down by someone they loved, you're not weak, you're not stupid, you're not broken. You were lied to, but that doesn't make you less, it makes you human. And once you reclaim your truth, once you rise back up with clarity and quiet power, there's not a single lie in the world that can hold you down again. So breathe deep, stand tall, and if you're still in the middle of your own storm, just know this. There's peace waiting for you on the other side. And trust me, it's worth every step. Not long ago, I got a letter. It was handwritten in ink that had smudged just enough to show hesitation. No return address, but I knew the handwriting like a memory I couldn't unsee. Rachel. I almost didn't open it. Part of me wanted to toss it straight into the fire pit and watch the past turn to ash. But another part of me, quieter, older, calmer, decided to read it. Not for closure, not out of curiosity, but to confirm what I already knew. That chapter was truly over. The letter was long, apologetic, full of the kind of introspection that only comes when life strips away your illusions. She said she regretted everything, that she missed who we were, that she'd lost herself chasing something that never existed, that she didn't expect forgiveness, only that I'd know she finally saw it. But here's the truth, I didn't need the apology. I didn't need validation, because healing isn't something someone else hands you. It's something you build alone, day by day, with your hands, your choices, your silence. I didn't write back, not because I'm angry or bitter or holding a grudge, but because some answers don't deserve echoes. Some stories don't get sequels. I folded the letter, tucked it away in a drawer, and took the dogs for a walk. We passed a field of wildflowers just starting to bloom, and I smiled to myself. Not because life is perfect, but because I'd made it through the fire without turning to ash. You see, revenge isn't always loud. Sometimes it's living so well that the past becomes irrelevant. It's waking up in the morning and realizing you're not haunted anymore, that no one owns your narrative but you. And if there's anything I've learned from this journey, from being deceived, from rebuilding, from letting go, it's this. Sometimes the best way to win is to simply walk away. not in anger, but in peace. And if you've been there, if you're still there, just know you're not alone. You're not crazy for loving. You're not weak for trusting. You're not naive for believing. You're human, and sometimes being human hurts, but it also heals. So if you're watching this, tell me where you're from in the comments. Let me know I'm not the only one who's walked through fire and came out whole. Like, share, subscribe, and remember, no matter what someone tried to take from you, your worth isn't something they ever owned. You were always enough. They were just too empty to see it. People often ask me now, how do you know when you've healed? The truth is, healing doesn't announce itself. There's no fireworks, no sudden moment of clarity where the sky opens and everything makes sense. It's more like this. You hear her name, and your stomach doesn't drop. You drive past the place where the lies began and your hands don't grip the steering wheel. You sit alone on a Sunday afternoon, and the silence doesn't feel like punishment. It feels like presence. That's how you know. There are still echoes, sure. Some memories don't disappear, they just get quieter, like distant thunder long after the storm has passed. But they don't control me anymore. They don't shape my days. What shapes my life now are the things I choose. I choose quiet mornings over chaos. I choose honest conversations over shallow comfort. I choose people who show up, not with charm, but with consistency. And I choose myself, every day. That's the part Rachel never understood. She thought love meant control. That safety was something to escape. That stability was boring. But love, real love, isn't about ownership or adrenaline. It's about peace, presence, partnership. And I've learned that the only person who can truly betray you is the one you give your power to. So now I keep that power close, not locked away, not hardened, but protected. There's a difference. I still walk the trails behind my cabin, still sip my coffee on that porch as the world wakes up. The dogs still wrestle like it's their first day on earth. And I still write, not about pain anymore, but about growth, about small joys, about the beauty in ordinary days. I'm not who I was when this started. I'm not even who I was a year ago. I've shed layers I didn't know were weighing me down. And now I live light. So if you've ever been broken, used, betrayed, let me leave you with this. You are not defined by what someone did to you. You are defined by how you rise after. And if this story meant something to you, if it reminded you that justice comes in quiet, steady ways, then do me a favor. Drop your city in the comments. Hit like. Share this with someone who needs to hear it. And subscribe for more stories like this. Stories where truth wins and the broken become whole again. Because sometimes the best revenge is never needing revenge at all.